Welcome back everyone to the third episode and week of Salmon Report. Hope you all had the time to kick off your shoes and rest away the stress of the wildcard weekend. We are finally back to normal. The Grizzco stringer honestly was very powerful, but it will take time until we can all get used to the stringers themselves. Either way, I'm looking forward to what other Grizzco weapons they have in store for us. Fortunately, we are back to normal, and as grim as the weapon rotations this week looked at first, I'm positively surprised on how much success I had the very first day, and I went full 180 degrees that the current double blaster map is quite amazing. But before we get started, a quick introduction. Welcome to everyone who is here for the first time. Salmon Report is a weekly series introducing the weapon rotations to Salmon Run and sharing tips and hints with each other for the week or in general to get better at this fantastic game mode. But Mr. Grizz has a message for you all, and he can express the meaning of this series much better than I ever could.
We at Grizzco Industries are devoted to doing absolutely everything in our power to create a brighter future for us all. As a valued member of our Grizzco family, we are committed to supporting you completely as you struggle against life's cruel realities. Together, we can build a company that embodies the change we wish to see in the world. We are one. We are Grizzco.
Now this week is quite interesting, and I believe it's a good opportunity to climb the ranks in Salmon Run. Especially the first weapon rotation, but the others are also quite decent, not to mention their ability to splat Kohazuna. The first and current rotation with the double blasters have been an absolute joy for me personally. I've already splatted I think 4 Kohazunas, and I climbed all the way to Executive 200 plus from Professional 1, where I fell with the random weekend, and it's been fantastic really. I've heard your feedback that you'd like more tips on each of the weapons on the week, and some of you really like me categorizing their roles, so you have an idea how you should be playing your weapon, so I'll try to go into a bit more details this time around. The first and current map is Sockeye Station, my favorite of the 3 maps, and the weapons are Luna Blaster, the L3 Nozzle Nose, Ballpoint Splatling, and the Rapid Blaster Pro. First impressions are usually that double blasters will be an absolute disaster, and admittedly I said the same. But these weapons have been really easy to handle honestly, despite their little quirks, and partially I think that can be thanked to the map. Sockeye Station has the best high ground location from all the maps, and it suits multiple of the weapons we have perfectly, but especially the Rapid Blaster Pro and the Ballpoint Splatling. These 2 weapons I would categorize as the defenders and stay near the basket weapons, and most of the time the best thing you can do is get on top of the large structure in the middle and shoot from there, as you have the range to pretty much shoot anything for 80% of the map, except for some of the very far shores. We have already talked in more detail about the Ballpoint Splatling in episode 2 that I recommend watching, but a quick reminder that the Ballpoint Splatling has 2 firing modes, the burst and the long range mode that you can 100% control by how much you're charging your weapon and keeping it on that particular charge. Refilling to full charge will always start with a burst, and keeping it partially charged will keep it long range. Make sure to use this as it's an essential technique to learn to fully embrace the ballpoint, as it's not only fantastic for damage at all ranges, but the burst shot might be the best painter for this rotation. For the Rapid Blaster, it was the weapon I was afraid the most that it might be weak, but using it from atop the tower has totally changed my mind. It's an absolute monster. Make sure to stay on high ground and keep shooting at fish sticks, steelheads, drizzlers, anything really, but those are the ones it's most effective against. The trick is to stay at the tower, as it seems to be the exact range that the gun uses, and your shots will basically never miss, and you will always deal considerable damage. Splatting fish sticks and steelheads have never been easier, and it's the absolute specialty of the range blaster. Use it similarly as a charger, stay on high ground, focus on bosses, and don't wander too far away from the basket. Then we get to the Nozzle Nose and the Luna Blaster, and these 2 weapons are frankly perfect roamers, so feel free to collect for eggs and move around the map with them a bit more, as they have good mobility, decent painting, but both of them have exceptional damage to keep themselves alive, while the Luna Blaster is a bit stronger in short range and the Nozzle Nose is more balanced. But if your Ballpoint and Rapid Blaster go-workers do their job, you should never feel uncomfortable with anything that comes at you, and they're perfect at handling at any of the bosses. The bonus tip of this episode is to utilize the training room in Salmon Run. If you haven't noticed, the Salmonid balloons have icons on them or stickers. These stickers represent the health of certain Salmonid bosses, and you can test your weapons how much it takes to splat a steelhead or let's say a scrapper. Make sure to test all your weapons so you don't get surprised in an actual run or how powerful they are, and more importantly, learn which enemies you should focus on and which ones you should potentially leave to your coworkers as they're better at dealing with them. The second map will be the Hydroplant, and I think the worst rotation of the week. Splattershot, Inkbrush, Flings-a-Roller, and the E-Litter Splatter Scope. This is honestly one of the challenges of the series that sadly Grizzco does not let you try out weapons in advance of the week, and I really wish they did, as I could do much better to test out and share tips and hints with you, but I'll try my best using the normal dummies. If you memorize the health of the dummies at Grizzco range, you can somewhat test other weapons in the normal training ground, but keep in mind the damage values are not exactly the same as far as I know. The reason I think this is the worst rotation is because of the Inkbrush and the E-Litter specifically, but I could always be wrong. This is just my current impression. The E-Litter would be a perfect weapon on the current map of Sockeye Station, but I feel on Hydroplant there just isn't a perfect spot for a splatter shot, as everything is relatively even ground, and most of the spawn points are also blocked by buildings, so you can't make use of the advantages of the E-Litter, which is increased damage and range. But especially with this weapon, don't roam. Stay at a good range and support your coworkers, and if you really have to resort to close range, use it like the Gootuber with rapid tap firing, as it's decent painting and damage to keep you safe. Then the Inkbrush was objectively one of the worst weapons for Salmon Run in Splatoon 2, and frankly it doesn't look a lot better in Splatoon 3. But if they buffed it or anything changes, I'll release a bonus episode just about this one. The Inkbrush is basically reduced to janitor duty, as it's great at painting but doesn't really excel at anything apart from splatting hordes, but it has trouble I think against most bosses apart from flipper floppers. Now that doesn't mean it's useless, as I think a lot of teams are terrible at keeping the ground painted, and it can really be the difference between losing and winning, and the Inkbrush is great at that. Since it's a brush, it's also fantastic for mobility. If you keep down ZR, you will be sliding on the ground with the brush with extreme speed, which is possibly the best way to collect faraway eggs, fast and safe. So as an Inkbrush, I would say you are on painting and egg collection duty, and let your coworkers handle bosses. Meanwhile, you can always help with the hordes that you are good at. The last weapon I'd like to talk about for the second map is the Flings-a-Roller, as the splatter shot is really just a standard gun, so not much to say there, it's a perfect generalist weapon. But the Flings-a is not a generic roller on the other hand. While its rolling is still capable of one-shotting chumps and small fries, its main strength is more around its flings, as its name implies as well. The weapon certainly has increased damage in Salmon Run compared to the normal testing range, and when fighting bosses and Quahawks, make sure you're using your horizontal swings for fast and effective splats to maximize damage. The Flings' specialty is that it deals good damage at all ranges, you just have to know what to use and when. Horizontal for close range fighting, and vertical jumping flings for painting and long range splats such as steelheads, let's say. If you take a look at the horizontal fling, it's really terrible for painting, but looking at the jumping one instead, it has excellent range and an explosion at the end, which is why it's fantastic for steelheads and also for painting. The final rotation is on spawning grounds, and the weapons will be Glugadoolies, Slosher, 96 Gal, and the Hydra Splatling. I think this is mostly a straightforward rotation for at least 3 of the weapons, so I won't go too much into details, just a few tips. The Glugadoolies, remember, act more like long-range guns, so make use of its range and don't go Rambo with it. Rolling with the Gluga will increase its damage and its range at the same time, so make use of it and kite Salmonids. The Gal is also a long-range high-damage gun. It's straightforward to use. I think we did not have this before in rotation, but my prediction is that it's going to be nuts against King Salmonids, so this might be a weapon worth focusing on just shooting Kohozuna instead of collecting eggs. It's definitely a boss killer, so make sure you focus steelheads, fish sticks, drizzlers as your range, and damage will be excellent against them, just like a charger. The Slosher, as far as I remember, is somewhat of a more mediocre weapon, sadly, for Salmon Run, as it doesn't specifically excel at anything in particular, apart from painting like the brush, but I'll refresh my memory on this rotation. My tip for this weapon would be to stay near the Gal or the Glugas and support them, as they are much better at handling any of the bosses, but they will struggle against hordes or getting overwhelmed, which the Slosher is excellent at. So this time around, the Slosher is on support duty for the big guns. The weapon that deserves a bit of attention on the other hand is the Hydra Splatling. This weapon has a fairly bad reputation from a few weeks ago due to some bad runs, but it's actually one of the best weapons for Salmon Run, especially against Kohozuna. Fortunately, Spawning Ground is also a decent map where there are a few higher spots to stand where you just have to stand still with your Hydra and split everything in your range, which is most of the map really. It is the highest damage and longest range splatling in the game. It's also the highest DPS weapon in Splatoon 3 as far as I know, so to make best use of it, move less and shoot more. Your job is to splat bosses and hordes with ease, and not to collect eggs. With the Hydra splatling on Kohozuna, I can 100% say don't even go for eggs. Keep shooting Kohozuna all the time. You're doing much more damage than eggs would, not just because of time, but simply the Hydra is just that overpowered against Kohozuna. I think those are my overall thoughts for this week. I once again tried a different approach to the series, with a bit more detail on the weapons, as I like to release bonus episodes during the week that show more gameplay footage when needed, or I think it deserves a bonus episode in the first place. I think most of you asked for a more report format like this, so I hope this week's episode was closer now to the goal that we're trying to achieve with the series, but leave a comment and let me know what you think. As always, if you have any further tips to any of the maps or weapons, let us know in the comments section, as we are in it together. I think this week is looking fairly good, and I would definitely push the first map for ranking up as it's very effective. But that's a wrap for this week's Salmon Report, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it, and I certainly hope it will help this week for everyone for more successful runs. As always, thank you so much for all the support for my Splatoon content, and I will see you all either in the next episode or another Splatoon video. Take care, and bye-bye.